Do you hallucinate? Are you suicidal? Have you ever been institutionalized? Are you crazy?
As he says, we are all crazy in one way or another.
In the new episode of Can't Ask, we are with Burke. Burke is paranoid. Hello, Burke.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Are you ready to answer the questions asked by our followers?
I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Burke. I'm 20 years old. I am a university student. I'm studying archaeology and sociology. I've been in treatment for 7 years.
What is paranoia?
Paranoia is a psychological disorder that manifests itself in the form of excessive anxiety and fear, even in irrational situations.
When were you first diagnosed?
My first psychological disorder diagnosis was actually mild depression 7 years ago. Over time, due to the lack of adequate conditions, the situation evolved into mild depression, then manic episodes, followed by major depression, anxiety, early signs of bipolar disorder, attention deficit, and hyperactivity disorder, and ultimately paranoia.
Are you currently on medication?
I haven't spent a single day without medication in the last 7 years. Fortunately, my treatment for paranoia has just ended. At the moment, I am not being treated for paranoia, but for major depression and attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder.
How do the medications make you feel?
Since I have been on so many different medications so far, I cannot directly say that the medications affect me in a certain way, but they have the following effects. Some medications can cause excessive sleep. Some of them prevented my anxiety attacks, but then I felt very numb and empty. Apart from that, I have a medication for attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. This is a drug that stimulates the central nervous system and activates the nerve endings in the brain. When I use it, I feel much more energetic, much more active, so I can say that it helps me to focus. In other words, almost all psychiatric drugs have different effects.
How did paranoia first appear?
Actually, the first symptoms appeared when I was very young. In the building where I lived, our next door neighbor and our downstairs neighbor had a very big fight that was so serious that it turned into a bloodbath. Because of this fight, I started to think that every sound I heard outside was the sound of a fight. I couldn't tolerate the slightest noise in the places I went to. I was constantly filled with great fear. It was as if a fight was happening even when children were playing outside, and I was anxious. A medication I had been taking for a long time started to have side effects on me in early 2020. I realized it was a side effect too late. I thought my anxiety attacks were over, but I started having serious attacks again. It was a drug I took every day. I didn't think it was this medication that triggered my anxiety attacks. I was having anxiety attacks every day and I couldn't stop it. We were constantly changing medication, but it was not helping. Then there was a time when I didn't take the medication and I realized that I was better when I didn't take it, and the anxiety attacks were not so severe. So I realized that my anxiety attacks were caused by the side effects of a certain medication. After that, my doctor kept changing medication. We kept switching to different medications, but those medications started to have similar effects, and we couldn't figure out exactly why. Why the medication had an effect like an anxiety attack? We kept changing medication, but I was very afraid to use it anymore because I was afraid that it would start having the same effect again. And that's how the paranoia started to show itself again. Actually, I had some symptoms of paranoia because of an incident I experienced when I was young. But I didn't have serious paranoia symptoms for a long time. And as I kept changing medications, and each new one came back to me in the form of side effects, the paranoia started to resurface.
Are you suicidal?
I was suicidal. In fact, I had made many attempts. There was even a situation where my doctor locked me in a room one day and wouldn't let me out until my family came to pick me up. Suicide had been on my mind for many years because of depression, but I could not feel myself ready. I actually didn't have the courage to do it. I had some small attempts. I was on a heavy antidepressant. There were times when I took it in high doses, when I took too much medication at once, When I told these to my doctor, he told me that I was not ready to commit suicide. I was surprised that he said that, because I thought he didn't understand me. I mean, what does it mean that I was not ready to commit suicide? Then he told me this. He said, "You are not ready to commit suicide, because a person who is ready for suicide does not think about an event that will happen a month later, an exam that he will take a week later." He was right. I was not ready to die. I didn't really want to die. I just wanted something to happen, good or bad. I just wanted things that were monotonous in my life to change. I wanted a difference. I saw death as a salvation. There was a period when I felt ready to commit suicide. During those times, one day I stood in front of the mirror. The next day I was determined to kill myself. I had made many plans. Then I started to examine my face. I touched my face, touched my cheeks, touched my lips. How alive I looked. So it gave me a great deep fear to know that one day all this vitality would be gone forever. So I felt I had no right to kill all this vitality. I actually had made many elaborate plans, and I was quite determined to carry it out. But a friend of mine talked me out of it. If he hadn't, maybe I wouldn't be here, because I felt completely ready. I was ready to give up everything and to leave everything behind.
Have you ever been hospitalized?
I mentioned that one day my doctor locked me in a room. At that time, my doctor told me that I should be hospitalized, that I would receive a very different treatment there, and that there would definitely be an improvement. Then we applied to a hospital for hospitalization, but my doctor there consulted with his professors. I was going to be hospitalized, but that was the time when I was taking my high school graduation exams, and instead of hospitalization, a different treatment was started with another medication so that I could take my exams.
Are you crazy?
When my mother was pregnant with me, she continued to menstruate regularly every month. That's why she never realized she was pregnant with me. I think it was called superfetation. So she could even have gotten pregnant again while she was pregnant with me. It could have been much worse. After she realized she was pregnant, she went to the hospital with my father to abort me. They had even taken her to the operating table, but finally the doctor said, "Get up, you're already in labor." Because I was too big, they decided not to go through with the abortion. Whether it was this incident or the depressive disorders I went through, I constantly felt like I was a mistake. I also thought I was crazy because there were no people around me who understood me. My differences bothered me a lot. I wanted to be like everyone else. I wanted to be invisible. In Paulo Coelho's book, Veronica Decides to Die, there was a quote like this: "You are someone who is different, but who wants to be the same as everyone else." And that, in my view, is a serious illness. As he said, I believe that we are all crazy in one way or another.
Are there people in your family diagnosed with such disorders?
There was nothing diagnosable, but it's certain they had some psychological struggles because they had very difficult times. Especially my brother is a former drug addict. It was always loud at home, yelling, chaos, nonstop arguments. These kinds of events affected the whole family, maybe especially me.
Do you ever hallucinate?
Not very often, but I had a very big hallucination when my brother was a drug addict. He rarely came home. We would lock the door when he came home and not let him leave. During one such period, only my brother and father were at home. I was sleeping in my room. I woke up to a huge noise, the sounds of a fight. I was so terrified that as soon as I got up, I started to circle around the room. I didn't know what to do. After a few seconds, when I came to my senses, I looked for the source of the noise and realized that it was coming from outside. I quickly ran to the balcony of my room. I looked down and saw my brother and my father beating each other to death. I saw that they were at each other's throats and there was a lot of noise. I felt like I'd been shot in the head. I couldn't breathe. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I ran to the door. When I tried to open the apartment door, it was locked because we always keep the door locked when my brother is home. So I went into the living room to get the key from where we hid it, and I saw my brother and my father watching TV together in the living room. I didn't know what to do. I was very confused. I just stared at them. They said what happened. They saw the look on my face. I said, "Weren't you two fighting outside just now?" And my father said no, laughing. At that moment, I collapsed on the ground. I tried to make sense of what I had experienced, but I couldn't. It didn't feel real, but it was real for me. I am afraid of having such an experience again. I thought about what would have happened if that door had been open. We live in a 5-story building with no elevator. Maybe I would have fallen down with that excitement, that fear. Maybe I could have jumped into a fight that wasn't there and I could have injured myself. Maybe I would have come to my senses by the time I got down. I don't know, but I am afraid of experiencing it again.
Has being paranoid impacted your daily life?
Yes, definitely. When I was walking on the road, I had a lot of feelings that at any moment a dog would attack me. At any moment someone would come and do something to kill me. I was stressing myself in very unnecessary places, for very unnecessary reasons, for very absurd reasons. These things were so real that they were negatively affecting my life. Especially, I could hardly use social media. I had already deactivated many of my accounts because it was like if I wrote a comment somewhere, someone would make fun of me, someone would take my photos and use them, etc. But there is no one who is my enemy or who doesn't like me. I get along well with everyone. I would catch feelings over nothing, really. I was afraid of everyone. I couldn't trust anyone. I pushed too many of my friends away from me. I was worried that they might hurt me. None of it was grounded in anything real.
Do you think you are ostracized in society?
Actually, I don't think I am ostracized because of my disorders. Because fortunately, I am a bit lucky in this regard. I have never had a disorder that would harm or negatively affect other people. Apart from that, for example, the neighborhood I lived in as a child, the one I grew up in, was a place where people lived simply because they had no other choice. I was ostracized a lot just because I spoke politely, because I didn't swear, because I didn't walk around in a suit and with rosary beads. They wanted me to be like them, but I was different. I didn't want to be like them. I was subjected to a lot of verbal abuse. These, of course, affected my psychology very negatively. They made me feel like a mistake and so on.
Does paranoia increase when you stop the medication?
After the diagnosis, I started a medication with 12.5 milligrams. Then we increased the dose by 12.5 each week until we reached 200 milligrams. I never stopped taking it and my treatment was not interrupted. Maybe that's why I was able to get over it so quickly. When I say quickly, I mean I fought with paranoia for about 1.5 years. There is so much information on the internet. In fact, I came across a video on YouTube. In the video I watched, the guy was talking about how the drug doesn't do anything, how it causes cancer and how it's deadly, etc. And when you listen to it, it really scares you. I already have paranoia, and when I see things like that, when I hear people saying that it causes cancer, etc., I get even more scared, but I'm glad I didn't quit. There were times when I seriously thought about quitting. But I'm glad I didn't quit because it's really a situation that nobody wants to be in.
Can you share an interesting experience you had when your paranoia was really intense?
They were very realistic fears for me, no matter how absurd they may seem to other people. I think the worst part was that paranoia also caused anxiety attacks. Let's say a friend of mine texted me and said, "Burke, we need to talk." As soon as I see this message, an incredible fear fills me. I wonder if we had a problem. Did I do something to hurt him? I mean, 1,000 thoughts come to my mind, and as long as he doesn't respond, this increases more. During an anxiety episode, I feel like my soul is trying to break free from my body, while there's also an external pressure pressing down on me. It's this unbearable sense of being stuck, and when paranoia adds to it, you lose all desire to live, to die, to feel joy. None of it matters in that moment.
How do you think you would be now if you had never taken medication?
Actually, a lot of people think that medication doesn't help or that it makes me worse. But I think if I had never been on medication from the very beginning, I don't think I would be here right now. Because in the past, I have been in really intense depressive moods. There were times when I was very suicidal, but at this point, I am incredibly afraid of death. I am actually thinking about how I can prolong my life, and I think it is the medication I am on that discourages me from dying. In fact, I don't regret any of the depression, anxiety, or paranoia I have experienced, because they all contributed something to me. For example, I think depression gave me maturity. It protected me. If I hadn't had a more mature mindset, I could have easily followed my peers and developed different habits. For example, if I had stayed in that state when I was severely depressed and withdrawn a lot, I think that I wouldn't be where I am now. I never felt like I fully recovered. However, at least I tried to do something about it. I tried to achieve something. I participated in a European Union project. I got a good internationally recognized certificate. I went to a writing workshop. I am still continuing. We published a collective book with the writers there. I worked on it and published my own book. People think that treatment can be done without medication, but for those going through such emotions, medication is necessary. Those who don't use medication are compared to cars without brakes. In order for the car not to have an accident, the brakes must be controlled. The person who knows this best is, of course, doctors, not the ants around us, not the people on the internet. It is important to follow the doctor's advice. With the right treatment, no matter how bad the situation is, I am sure it is possible to see the sunlight again.